Rell Seas could potentially be the biggest game ever created on the Roblox platform. Now, just 2 days ago, Rell Seas Movie 2 came out to the public, and much like a lot of people anticipated, it did actually deliver some really good information and gameplay that people were looking forward to seeing. Yes, there were a lot of things that we didn't get to see, and there were a lot of things even in the movie that weren't actually that good. If I'm being quite honest, them using Butcher to commentate the whole movie was very silly. Obviously the trolling with that, and some of the PvE actually didn't look that good during the movie. However, as we do know, that was fixed, so it doesn't really matter. But in terms of Roblox anime games on the platform, Rell Seas is the most ambitious, and if everything is pulled off correctly, it could honestly be one of the most well created games, or just the biggest game on the platform in terms of content, diversity, things to do in the game, and actual playable immersive features. The only other game that's comparable to that right now on Roblox is Deep Woken, where honestly I would say Deep Woken is the most well created game on the platform at the moment. But in this video, we're just going to be talking about the things that I think are really good and why I honestly think Rell Seas could be the biggest game ever created on the Roblox platform. So do me a huge favor before we get into this, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and let's actually get into some of these topics. Now, this video is really weirdly structured because it's very hot in London, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I can't sit down here for too long. But something people have been making such a big deal of recently is games having tutorials. And guess what? Rell Seas has a tutorial, and it is skippable. So when you're making a new account or a new slot, you don't actually have to play through the tutorial again. But Rell Seas tutorial shows you basic game mechanics, stuff like parrying, blocking, dodging, etc, which obviously new players, young players, and even Blox Fruits kiddies are going to need, because the game might seem a little bit complex at first. However, one thing I do think they should add, or try to tell the users, is that you can change your keybinds. Because what I did notice in movie 2 is that some of the keybinds in Rell Seas are a little bit weird. They're abnormal. It's not what we're used to in general when it comes to anime games. I'm pretty sure parrying was right click. I've never seen that ever before in my life. But the Rell brothers have stated before that keybinds will be able to be changed. You can set your own keybinds. So instead of leaving that to people to figure out on their own, I do think that should be placed in the tutorial so that players, especially new players, everyone's going to be new, but especially new players or players coming from other games, understand that they don't have to use abnormal keybinds. One of the biggest things I honestly think is going to make Rell Seas is the Hades Asylum, or let's just call it Impel Down. Impel Down is potentially one of the most interesting concepts for a gulag system on the platform, even in general. The only game that I can relate that has a good system of this caliber is Deep Woken when it comes to layer 1. Once you get killed twice in the overworld, you get sent down to the depths, which is layer 1, where you have a chance to get your life back. Layer 1 has lore in Deep Woken, and it has a good amount of gameplay features down there for players to explore and play through. There's a lot of progression tied to layer 1, so layer 1 is important. And the same can be said with Rell Seas. Impel Down has 5 or 6 floors, so I'm assuming in Rell Seas it will have 5 or 6 floors of actual playable content, with each floor being its own instance with different gameplay features, biomes, progression, different mobs, mini bosses, floor bosses, events, treasures, and secrets to uncover, with so much gameplay in just one area of the game. That is super crazy. And the Asylum or Impel Down is going to be tied towards progression, so you're gonna go there at some point whether you notice it or not. Now, what I really find interesting is how we're gonna actually get to Impel Down. Whether that's getting captured by a marine or getting killed by a marine when you have high bounty determines where you go. It is a gulag system, so I'd assuming either you get arrested or you get killed by a marine. I don't think getting killed by a pirate would send you to Impel Down, so I'm very sure it is a marine thing. And the floor you spawn on would most likely depend on how much bounty you have, but we're not too sure. It's way too early to tell. On top of that, it's not just for pirates. Marines have progression tied to Impel Down as well. So honestly, I genuinely think this is super interesting. Just Impel Down alone has enough content for the game to release with by itself. That could be an update within its own right. But remember, Rell Seas is releasing with Impel Down. Now this topic can go either way. The player-driven economy is going to be huge. And I don't mean, oh, players are just going to go in the trade hub and trade fruits for cool gear. I mean, players are genuinely going to make this game come to life. As we've seen with things like the fishing decks, crafting decks, recipe decks, etc., we do know that players that specialize in one, if not all of these professions, are actually going to drive the economy crazy. Yes, you will need to be a powerful pirate or marine, but let's say you're also a powerful pirate and marine, and you're also a really well-renowned cook. You have a bunch of cooking recipes, and not just any cooking recipes, high-level cooking recipes that give a bunch of EXP, that boost player stats significantly. You're only gonna get good recipes through fishing quite often, because obviously rare fish is gonna cook rare recipes, and you need to unlock and gather these different recipes as well, most of them probably being locked behind having to find these rare fish in different areas of the sea. Now imagine how important eating high level meals is going to be in Rell Seas. You're going to need players that specialize in cooking. So high level cooks with high level recipes will be selling their meals, will be trading their meals for other items, etc. Now, if you guys do remember, in Rell Seas Movie 1, they did talk about players being able to put up stands, make little marketplaces, and sell things. Now, what I find really interesting is you can set your items that you have for sale up and go AFK and just allow players to buy them, or will you be able to go offline and allow players to buy your items like that as well? I doubt that's going to be a thing, but it would be super interesting if you can make stands, list up your items, go offline, and when you come back online, you can see what players bought your items and how much. Well, you're obviously going to list the price, but you can see how much you got in total when you come back. The only other game I can visualize when it comes to setting up stands and selling things is MapleStory. If you have rare gear, rare equipment, you can make a marketplace, or you set a stand, you put up the items you want to sell, and you can either AFK or go offline, and players will come and see what you have to offer. If they like what you're selling and have enough money to buy whatever you requested for that item, they could buy it and it would go straight to the player even though they're not there, which I found to be a very cool concept. And then things like that would translate for crafting armors, blueprints for warships. Remember, warships are a thing. Blueprints for warships, blueprints for really special armors, or even crafting those armors. And you need to remember, to craft armors, you need to also have materials. Some materials may be harder to get than others. Maybe some materials like a dragon scale can only be got by defeating one of the hardest dragon bosses in the game. So instead of the craftsman going out of their way to get it, if the craftsman is a high enough level and is able to actually build the armor, they will tell the player, hey, I can build that armor for you, I'm a high enough level, but you need to go get the materials and I'll build it for you for a cheaper price or a discounted price if you go out of your way to get one of the materials. It's just exchanges like that that's going to be super cool, because not everybody's going to have the time to get their proficiencies or the professions all the way up to the max. So players that focus on the professions will obviously be richer than other players. And remember, if you're a player that's focusing on getting your player more powerful and you're not focusing on your professions, in order for you to afford to hire or to buy or to even trade for other items, weapons, recipes, etc., you're going to need to be rich. You need to have the money in order to back up the chat. So that also adds more content, more replayability, because unless you're rich, you're not doing anything for anyone. This is going to be super interesting. Another really good and interesting gameplay feature is the poster card system. I'm going to speak about all of them as a whole and how poster cards affect character builds, hockey in its progression, and even combat in its progression. Now, poster cards are going to be super important in defining your character builds. And you can unlock poster cards in many different ways, through different bosses, through different events. And remember, there's going to be multiple events. There's land events, sea events, underwater events, etc. Through treasure chests, I'm very sure you're going to be able to find poster cards within Impel Down, obviously, because there's going to be bosses there and treasures there, as well as the most interesting way to get poster cards is through the crew, or should I say NPC faction system. Now, I said in Rell Seas Movie 2, there's going to be over 40 different NPC factions. Some of them are allied with each other, some of them are not allied with each other, and some of them are just cool. Now, you're not going to be able to play a Moist Critical, aka a Charlie. You can't just be neutral with every single faction. If you're cool with one faction, you're going to make enemies with a different faction. And there's going to be events where you need to pick a side and decide which faction you want to help in those events. And if you help one faction, well, guess what? You just made an enemy of another faction and all that other faction's allies. And what does... And what does that mean? It means you're not going to be able to get every single NPC faction's poster cards, because you need to be allied or cool with those factions in order to unlock access to their poster card abilities. So you're not actually going to be able to have every single poster card at once, which means player builds are going to be diverse. Obviously, they're going to be meta builds that majority of the player base uses, but this won't come until later on, because players are actually going to need to explore which factions has good cards. That's going to be gate-kept by the devs, so players are going to have to find that out for themselves, which means a lot of account creations need to be done, because we need to find out what the meta poster cards are. But this adds a whole bunch of player diversibility into the game, at least when it comes to combat poster cards. With hockey, there's definitely going to be fan favorites, but we're gonna have to wait and see. It's definitely way too early to tell. And there's still so much more content. There's so much more content that we haven't spoke about, that the Rell brothers didn't speak about in Rell Seas Movie 2. We're still lacking so much information. Underwater progression, underwater exploration, overworld exploration, ocean exploration, upgrading and obtainment of ships, submarines and its upgrading, just ocean content in general. Sea Beast Wars, there is a Sea Beast War event that's super interesting within itself. Does that mean we can capture and tame Sea Beast? We still don't completely know what or how we'll be obtaining fruits, or what we need to do to obtain fruits. But remember, they're meant to be super rare, but every fruit is said to be useful in some way, shape or form. What does the power creep look like when a fruit user or when a hockey user that obtains a fruit look like? What does being a hockey main look like? What does being a fruit main look like? How strong actually is hockey compared to the fruits? Weapons and weapon classes, they haven't shown us too much or even really gone in depth about individual weapons, weapon classes, weapon styles, etc. Because weapons is going to be important, especially because no one's going to be running around with fruits at first. So weapons is going to be what people are using. Going in detail about the differences in terms of combat and hockey poster cards, the potential system, because there is a potential system. There also is a luck system in this game as well. What do those mean? How is leveling actually going to work? We've seen glimpses of it before. It's been hinted at a RuneScape style of progression, which a lot of the Roblox player base have no idea what RuneScape is or have ever played. But how is it going to feel once incorporated into Rell Seas? Player progression, how is that actually going to work? And how does not focusing on the main storyline and focusing on your profession affect your levels? All of these questions don't have answers, and even with these questions that I've said, it still scratches the surface because there's still so much more. In terms of gameplay, Rell Seas is like 3 updates into one for just the release. There's a lot of content with this game. How is it all gonna balance out? How's it all gonna get balanced? The good thing is that we do know the Rell brothers actually do work pretty fast, so updates won't take too long. But then again, this game's releasing with so much content, they might not even need to update for the first 2 months of the game. Again, this is still all surface level. Usually when it comes to games being developed, Roblox developers aren't that transparent. And even when they are, you can see, well, their game has cool sneaks, looks really good, but there isn't that much content. But on the contrary, with Rell Seas, we've seen that there is a lot of content, an overwhelming amount of content in fact, in terms of its release. So we know we're not going to be lacking in terms of content for Rell Seas. This game is going to release with an abundance worth of content. And guys, I want you to honestly think about it. Think of every game that's released within the past 3 to 4 years. Releases never have content. But I guarantee you somebody will hear me say that and still say I'm glazing. Rell Seas could potentially be the biggest game ever created on the Roblox platform. And that is it from me. If you have any questions, if you have your opinions, please write them down in the comments down below. Write what you would like to see, write what you feel about Rell Seas. I've seen a lot of videos of content creators saying Rell Seas is mid, but if you look on the games they play on their channel, no comment. There's a lot of critique for Rell Seas when there isn't actually any entertaining games on the platform that is worth criticizing Rell Seas over. Unless you're a Deep Woken player, it's understandable. Deep Woken's a very good game. Other than that, don't think anyone could chat for the chat. Do you understand? Let me see y'all boys in the next one. Love and appreciate y'all. Peace.